All right, welcome back everyone. Today we are jumping right into a highly focused explainer that tackles a very specific yet absolutely crucial ICD-10-CM guideline. We're talking about guideline A.17. You know it, you've seen it, it's the code also note. If you spent, any time at all navigating the index and tabular list, this little note has definitely popped up on your pages. But what does it actually mean for your final code selection? Well, we are going to demystify the whole thing today and get you coding this exactly the AMCI way.
Okay, let's dive into this. When you're looking at a medical record, right, and you land on a code that carries a code also note, this is the ultimate dilemma you're forced to ask yourself. Do I need more than one code? It's literally like the manual is tapping you on the shoulder, pointing straight at the documentation, and asking if a single code is really enough to paint the whole clinical picture. It's a prompt. It's making you pause for a second before you move on, forcing you to verify what's actually going on with this specific patient.
So let's clearly define what this note is telling us. Code also is a note indicating that two codes may be required to fully describe the condition. Notice that word may. It's a glaring signal from the classification system that a single code might just fall short of capturing everything the provider actually documented. It gives you the flexibility to add another code to ensure maximum specificity. But as we know, flexibility in coding always comes with a need for some high-level analytical skills.
But listen, before we get too eager to just start throwing multiple codes on a claim, we have a golden rule. Both codes absolutely must be documented and clinically supported. Just because that code also note suggests a second code might be needed, you can never, ever assign it unless the provider's documentation explicitly supports both conditions. You just can't code what isn't there. The note is a suggestion to look for the detail. It is not an authorization to invent it. If the documentation lacks the detail for that second condition, you've got to stick to what is actually supported.
And this brilliantly illustrates the major plot twist of guideline IA-17. Now, what's really interesting about this rule is the contrast it sets up. You're probably super familiar with notes like code first or use additional code from the etiology and manifestation guidelines. Those notes, they are strictly authoritative. They give you explicit sequencing direction. They tell you exactly who goes first and who follows. But code also? No way. It gives absolutely zero instruction on which code goes first. It basically just says, hey, you might need two. It completely leaves the order totally up in the air.
So think about it. If the rule doesn't dictate the order, who does? Well, you do. This is where you step up. Sequencing these codes comes down entirely to coder judgment, and you base that judgment on three vital clinical factors. First, you've got to identify the primary reason for the encounter. Like, why is the patient actually here today? Second, evaluate the severity of the conditions to see if one requires more immediate resources or active treatment. And third, assess the overall clinical circumstances of the admission or the visit. You literally have to put on your detective hat, read the medical note, and make a logical decision based on those three factors. I really want to emphasize this because, honestly, it's where so many people stumble on exams and in real-world audits. There are zero sequencing directions given by this specific note. I repeat, zero. You cannot rely on the book to tell you which code goes first in this scenario. This is exactly why your critical thinking skills and your ability to analyze the provider's documentation are just absolutely paramount. You aren't just matching numbers, you're translating a clinical story, and you have to decide the chronological order of that story.
Now, understanding this rule helps us avoid some seriously dangerous coding traps that lead straight to claim denials and incorrect sequencing. Trap number 1. Assuming code also tells you which goes first. We just busted that myth. Trap 2, ignoring the note and missing the second code entirely, which leads to incomplete coding. Trap 3, confusing code also with code first. Remember, they act very differently. Trap 4, automatically throwing codes on the claim without pausing to consider the actual reason for the encounter. And finally, the ultimate error, assigning that second code without the proper provider documentation to actually back it up.
To make sure you never fall into those traps, I want to give you our AMCI Motzi gem. This is literally like a secret weapon for your coding exams and your daily workflow. Are you ready? Code also equals two codes. You decide the order. I'm just going to let that sink in for a second. Use both codes when the documentation calls for it, but you determine the sequencing. This powerful mnemonic anchors the entire lesson right in your mind. Whenever you see that note, I want you to recite this gem to yourself. So the crucial point is this. No direction means you must use your judgment. The classification system is trusting you, as a certified professional, to review the medical record and apply clinical logic. You are the one assessing the severity. You are identifying the chief complaint. You are reading the clinical context. The ICD-10-CM manual gives you the tools, for sure, but you are the architect building the final claim.
Let's bring all of this theory right into real-world application. Here is the final, practical mental checklist you must run through every single time you encounter a code also note. Step 1. Ask yourself, do I need more than one code? Check the documentation to be totally sure. Step 2. Ask, what is the primary reason for the encounter? Like, why is the patient actually standing in front of the doctor today? Step 3. Sequence your codes based on your answer to Step 2. The condition that is the primary focus of the encounter gets sequenced first. It's a clean, logical, 3-step process that pretty much guarantees you are coding accurately. Which brings us to our final thought for this explainer. Are you ready to trust your coder judgment? Because at the end of the day, that is what the code also note is truly all about. It's stepping away from rigid instructions and stepping into active clinical analysis. Mastering this note really unlocks your confidence to navigate complex medical records and code accurately without constantly second-guessing yourself. You've got the rules, you've got the MJ gem, and you know exactly how to apply them. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and as always, keep coding the AMCI way.